Hey guys, today we're going to be repowering this early 2000 fiberglass bass boat, but not with a new outboard. We're going to put a new Minn Kota Ultrex on the bow of this boat. All kinds of new features that this angler will be able to use, not only for himself, but for his kids who are big into the high school fishing league. They'll be able to get a step ahead with some of that stuff, utilizing the Minn Kota products with the Humminbird products, and back to that one boat network with the spot lock, the follow the contour, the jog feature, and also the mega down imaging transducer built into the lower unit. So the first thing I like to do after I get the box opened up is I like to pull all the parts out that we'll be using and lay them out on the deck so they're readily available. Just kind of get everything laid out, put it up on the bow of the boat, and we'll start marking where we're going to mount this mono arm and then start drilling some holes. In the owner's manual, page through it, you're going to see the tools and resources required to install this. So just going through the list, you're going to need a number 2 Phillips screwdriver, a number 3 Phillips screwdriver, a 1/4 inch Allen wrench, a drill, a 9 32 drill bit, a 7/16 box end wrench, a person to help you, a torque wrench, file or sandpaper, a hacksaw, a marker or a pencil, an 1/8 inch flat screwdriver, an 1/8 inch Allen wrench, and some Loctite. All right, so the first thing I like to do is take our mono arm and just size things up. You know, there's a lot of similarities in boats, but there's also a lot of little differences. Ultrexes are set up from the factory to be mounted on the port side of the boat, which we're going to on this boat, so we don't have to switch anything. But I like to take this mono arm and just kind of hold it up there. We want to make sure we got enough clearance right here so our lower unit isn't hitting the bow of the boat. We want to make sure there's any obstructions back here with the control panels or any sonars or mounting equipment. And right now that looks like a pretty good location for this thing. So I guess our next step would be to pull out some tools and start marking and drilling holes. There's a certain way I like to install the Ultrex. I like to put the motor onto the mono arm first. And the reason I do that, when this is stowed, I like to have the head of the unit inside of the rub rail of the boat. And the reason why is if it's sticking outside a little bit and you come up to a dock post, you'd have a chance of damaging the head of that Ultrex. So it makes it a little bit more cumbersome, and that's when the help, your helping hand, is beneficial. But what I like to do is take our mounting bolt out of here, and then I set the mono arm back on the floor, and I actually put the Ultrex together, mount the motor to the mono arm, and then I fold it up like it would be in the stowed position, and then I hold it up to the boat, set it up on the boat, and then I start drilling my holes. So to mount the motor to the mono arm, the first thing you need to do is remove this bolt. In the bag that I just removed, there's a fastener in here, and what that does is it attaches the lift assist shock to the actual mono arm. That'll be put on later. One thing you'll notice, there's a safety latch on this mono arm. We don't have this, the lift assist shock attached, so we don't have to worry about any pressure on it. But to get this open, you have to push that lever down and then lift up on the cable. All right, you'll see some notches in the aluminum casting here, and that'll slide right down on these plastic pieces on the mono arm. So right now the only thing left we have to do is put in our mounting bolt to the casting that'll attach it to the mono arm. Now that I have the motor securely fastened, the next thing I like to do is put it in the stowed position. And I like to mount it or set it where the lower unit is pretty much in its lowest setting. So right here, looking at the motor's resting probably 4 inches in. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna redeploy this about halfway, slide the shaft down so my lower unit is sitting right at the edge of here. And that'll tell me the max that this will be sticking out. So we can mount to set it up on the boat. We don't have to worry about that, the head of the motor sticking out past beyond the rub rail. Just loosen up your depth collar, slide it up a couple inches, tighten it up, put your motor back down, and then put it back in the stow position. That's about where I like to have it when I mount it on the boat. And I'll just set it up on the bow of the boat and sized up good. We got our overhang up here over the bow, so we know we're not going to be hitting the bow of the boat with our lower unit. I'm inside of the rub rail here, so that looks like a pretty good location. Now we can mark our holes and drill and fasten this trolling motor to the boat. So you'll see in the bottom of the plate here, there's a number of pre-drilled holes. We're just going to mark those and transfer them through to the boat. I like to use a silver Sharpie. It just shows up better on the black matting on this bow of the boat. You also notice there's, what, 6, 7, there's 8 holes in the bottom of this. If you read your owner's manual, they require a minimum of 4 mounting points. We're going to get for sure 4. I'm going to mark the one way up in the front too, but before I drill it, I'm going to reach my arm underneath there and make sure it's free and clear that I can get a washer and a nut on the bottom of that bolt. If I can't, I'm not going to drill it. A lot of tools necessary to do this. I like to get everything out and ready to go and keep it, close by just to be more efficient. I'm not walking back and forth to the toolbox. Everything's right here that I need in front of me. So now our holes are marked. I'm just going to slide this trolling motor off of the location of the bow and put it back here. Okay, you can see our hole marks on the front. Okay, now we need to take off this bow plate. Screws are already removed. We're just going to pull this off. And you're going to see a mess of wires underneath it. Okay, really that won't affect us at all. We just want to get them out of the way. Now I'm going to reach underneath and feel underneath where my holes are marked and look for any obstructions. And there's only one obstruction right here, and there's a support rail underneath here. So we'll get through that, and that one is clear, so we're going to utilize that 5th hole. Ideally, 4 mounting bolts are adequate. I like to get as many as possible, so we are able to get this 5th one in. It just keeps that base more stable. I'm just kind of touching on the high points, guys, but 9 30-second drill bit that we're going to be drilling the holes for our mounting bolt. Again, refer back to your owner's manual. One other thing I like to do whenever drilling into a fiberglass boat is I like to countersink the holes I just drilled. It just keeps any spider cracks from happening. Even though it's covered with this rubber piece, I still do it just to prevent any spider cracking coming from that hole. Okay, our holes are drilled. Next thing I like to do is I like to take our tie-down strap and I put it on the motor first around the shaft. And again, referring back to your owner's manual, the location for this from inside of the boat looking forward, they want it between the first set of holes and the second set of holes. So what I normally do is I get it in place, I snug it up, and then just slide it to the proper location. Okay, the other thing I like to do as far as the length on here, there's a little hem on the strap. I like to keep that hem right tight to the motor. That way, if you'd go opposite, this is hanging outside of the boat. So by keeping that hem tight to the side plate of the trolling motor, or within an inch or so, snug it down, okay? That's a perfect location for that tie-down strap. Okay, we'll set the motor in place, line up our holes. Now we got our hardware laid out. We got our quarter 20 bolts, our nylocks, and our fender washers. One thing I like to do, because we're using stainless on stainless, is I like to put a little anti-seize on each bolt. It'll prevent any gulling of the nuts onto the stainless steel bolts. You'll notice right here I have a number 2 bit on the right side and a number 3 on my left. And the reason a number 3 should be used is because it fits tightly into the head of the screw here, of the bolt. You put it up to a number 2, and there's a little slop or wobble in there. And if you do use a 2, there's a chance you could strip out the head of this, making removal for service or removal to replace whatever more difficult down the road. I like to use an impact, a couple reasons. It's gonna get it more tighter. You have more control on the speed when you're tightening everything up to prevent any stripping of the head. Okay, I got all the nuts and washers started on our bolts here, so now I'm just gonna reach down and just take that 7/16 box wrench and hold our nut in place and then tighten everything up on the top here. Now that we got the motor securely fastened to the boat, our next step is going to be attach the lift assist shock to the mono arm. So go ahead and deploy it, but I like to keep it right at that position, kind of keep that lower unit down right in the cradle here, and that'll keep everything still where you want it. And you remember we removed this pin earlier. We're going to utilize that now. There's a couple spacers, the pin, and 2 screws. So what I do is I'll start one of the screws in the pin. Okay, and there's Loctite on there, so it's going to be a little bit difficult. Just get the thread started. Okay. Insert the pin through one of the holes and put your spacer on. Then stick that pin just a little bit past the spacer. Go ahead and lift your shock up, slide that through. And another trick then to get the other spacer in is I'll stick a screwdriver through the other hole, thread the spacer on there, and then just chase the screwdriver out with the pin, okay? Now go ahead and start your other screw. And again, we're using that number 3 Phillips tip. Okay, so now I'll use my impact and then hold the other side. Now your lift assist spring is securely fastened. Next step then, I just put it back down in the stowed position. Now you take your 9/16 wrench, we're going to remove the prop nut and put the prop on. Go ahead and just loosen the nut that's on the armature shaft. Okay, and you'll notice there's a red washer, a stainless washer, and a spacer and a pin. The red washer and the spacer can be discarded. Okay, put your pin in, center it in there, and you'll notice on the back of the prop, it's notched. Go ahead, put that on there. Washer, and then back to that anti-seize. I always like to put just a little bit on here, again, because we got stainless with stainless. The shear pin is designed to break if you hit something with a certain amount of force, protecting the motor. Go ahead and finger tight the nut. And then just take your 9/16 ratchet. Snug it up and you'll feel it bottom out right there. So with that, your prop's complete. So our next step in the installation process is to go ahead and put on the stabilizing arm. So you'll see the bracket here that's already threaded on, so we'll just simply remove that. The purpose of the stabilizing arm, just as the name implies, it keeps the motor from bouncing when you're heading over rough water. Remove the nuts. They will not be used in this installation. You'll notice on the bottom side of the drive housing, there's 2 holes on this side and 2 holes on the outside, okay? Because of the location of everything, it's a better fit to put it on the inside here. Now we're stabilizing off the floor. If you have a flat gunnel, you can also put it on the outside, but the gunnel on this particular boat is rounded, so we aren't gonna get a good stable base here. So we're gonna decide to put it on the inside here. So go ahead and use a little bit of anti-seize. So with their bracket installed, now what we want to do, this is how it normally would fit, but notice it's way too long. So what we want to do is flip it upside down, okay? Line it up, so take the top of your bracket and mark a mark about 3/4 of an inch above that. And that's where we're gonna cut our arm off, and that'll give us the proper length to make sure everything's nice and secure. So back to your owner's manual, this is where the hacksaw comes into play. You wanna cut off your stabilizing arm right at that mark that you marked earlier. So you're done cutting it, you're gonna have a couple burrs on the edge of that. So in the owner's manual it mentioned a file, so that's what the file's for. Just kind of take some of the burrs off, remove any sharp edges, and then the end cap will slide on here a little bit easier too. So here's your bottom end cap. You're gonna put that over the end you just cut and filed down. Deploy the motor just a little bit to give yourself some working room. Then go ahead and thread the stabilizing arm right into the bracket we mounted earlier. Okay? And if you remember when we marked it 3/4 of an inch high. That just gives us a little bit of adjustability if we ever need it. Okay? And then you got an end cap there to put over the threads just to clean everything up and make it look nice. If you need to adjust this a little bit, you just simply loosen your rod to give yourself some more length, and then tighten this plastic nut up against the mounting bracket. And now you have a little more length here if you should need it. All right guys, the motor's installed. Now we're gonna do a little cable management. So running out of the head of this unit, we got 2 cords. One's a transducer cord, which is for our MDI transducer. The other one is an Ethernet cord, which is connected to the iPilot link. And there's a specific way I like to do this. Right now, we don't have a whole lot of slack in these 2 cords, so what I like to do is partially deploy the motor and raise it up to the point where our coil cord is stretched out a little bit. Now looking at this configuration, he'll never raise it higher than this because he wouldn't be able to stow it properly. So this is kind of the slack that I'm gonna go with right here. And I'm gonna give it just a little bit more, a couple more inches. Okay, that'll give us a little bit of slack when we're turning with this coil cord. Once that length is determined, I'll zip tie it right to the base of our main cord going to the foot pedal. Okay, so right now, just by doing that, I have enough slack if he wants to raise the trolling motor. I also have enough slack so when the motor's turning, nothing's gonna get pinched or pulled tight. Okay, so that's done. Now I'll go ahead and partially deploy it again and put it back down on the depth collar. So you can see everything's contained inside this coil cord, nice and neat, yet we have the slack we need for the different heights and the different applications, turning radius, stuff like that. So next thing I like to do is kind of centralize this foot pedal where the user would have it. And usually it's kind of right in that area. Then I'll go ahead and I'll take our transducer cord and our iPilot link cord and just kind of follow the trolling motor foot pedal cord down in that manner. Then just simply put some zip ties on it and tie everything up so it's nice and neat. So you can cut these zip ties with a simple side cutter. You can get them as close as you can, but no matter how close you try, you're still gonna get a little sharp edge. So I just use a simple zip tie tool, and it pulls them tight, cuts them flush. Prevents any sharp edges on that zip tie. So the next step, once we got our cables managed, our next step is to power up the trolling motor. So every trolling motor out of the box at the end of the power cord comes with 2 ring tongue terminals. Some boats, they can be hardwired, so we'd have a hole in the dash plate here, and this would go directly to battery, positive and negative. Other boats might have a receptacle on it. So this is the particular plug that's gonna fit or match the existing receptacle on the boat. So we're gonna go ahead and open this up and attach our power cords to the cord. I get a number of calls every year asking for the proper plug for an Ultrex or a Tarova or whatever trolling motor they have. Plugs are not trolling motor specific, they're boat specific. So you have to get the proper plug. Go to your local marine dealer and get the proper plug that'll fit the receptacle on the boat. So on this particular plug, there's three prongs on it, and they're numbered. There's a 1, 2, and 3. 1 is always negative, and it even shows on the back of the plug. So we're going to use 1 for negative. And on the receptacle on this boat, that's something you're always going to want to check, either with a voltmeter or visually inspect it. In this particular boat, number 2 is our 36 volt positive. So we need to be 1 is negative and 2 is going to be our 36 positive or a red wire. 3 is just going to be open because there's no wire to the back of the receptacle. So there's nothing we need to do there. So we cut off our ring tongue terminals. We're going to strip our sheathing back a little bit. In this plug, there's a couple sleeves. I'll show you how those work. So we know we're using number 1 for negative. So I'll loosen up our set screws. I'll slide our wire through the plug cover. Then I'll take the sleeves, and in this particular plug, there's a little collar on the back, okay? So that'll go out or over the insulation, toward the insulation part of it. Okay, put that in the socket. That's numbered 1. We'll take our Allen screw and just tighten it up. Repeat the process for a positive. Okay, our leads are securely fastened in the plug. We're going to slide the plug cover over the actual plug, and these are keyed, so you'll have to make sure you get it keyed properly. Put the screws back in place, snug them up. Put the back of the plug on. Okay, our plug's securely fastened to the motor. We're going to go ahead and plug it in and see if this thing works. So to complete the installation of this Minn Kota Ultrex, we're going to put the heading sensor on. What the heading sensor does is when we're in spot lock, it gives us the ability to jog forward, back, left or right in 5-foot increments. It also gives us circle mode. Circle mode is, let's say you have a waypoint on a lake and you want to circle that waypoint, whether it's 20, 30, 40, whatever distance off of that waypoint. This will tell the motor which way to steer. To install it, I mean, we're going to look for a suitable location. Every boat's a little bit different. There's speakers in boats. There's magnetic fields that could throw this off. So what I like to do is kind of run around the boat a little bit with just a simple compass. And if you go over a magnetic object, I'll see the needle jump, and then I'll know, hey, that's not a good place to put this heading sensor. So in this particular boat, kind of right up here on the bow, seemed to be the best location, the most clean location. So we're going to go ahead and mount that right there. We're going to drill a hole in the bottom, and you'll notice a wire here. What this wire is a power wire. You need 12 volts. You'll have to be a little bit careful because a lot of times, you know, you have 36 volts or 24 volts up on the bow for your trolling motor. You can pull it from trolling motor power. You just have to make sure you're pulling from 12 volts, 12 volt only. And always a good idea to put a fuse on the end of this thing. So we got our hole drilled in the deck to run our power cord through. And our power supply is only about 2 feet from where we're mounting this. You'll see it comes with a pretty good amount of wire. I don't need that much. Just to keep things clean, I'm just going to cut Some of the wire we don't need, we'll discard that. Run our wire through our hole. Pull that tight. One other thing to note is there's an arrow on the top of this heading sensor. That arrow needs to be parallel with the keel of the boat. Now we're going to drill a few holes and use the supplied stainless steel screws and mount this to the deck. So again, just double check, make sure our arrow is parallel with the keel of the boat. Go ahead and drill our pilot holes and then screw this down solid. So with that mounted, we're going to go ahead and get a fuse holder and supply power to our heading sensor. There is power already up on the bow of this boat, and what's nice about it, it's switched power. You should have this on some sort of master switched power, which we do. We have it right here. Switched power is good just to eliminate as much phantom draw throughout the boat as possible. This draws very, very little, but this and a number of other components you might have in your boat all add up to be a significant amount of phantom draw. In the owner's manual, it calls for a 1 amp fuse, which we have right here. We'll go ahead and insert that into our waterproof fuse holder. Then just get some butt connectors. Fasten our fuse holder to the positive or red lead from the heading sensor. Now this is pretty fine wire, so sometimes if you need to, since you're hooking it to bigger wire, you need to use a little bit bigger barrel butt connector. So you might find yourself twisting up your wire and then doubling it over to increase the wire that you're going to be crimping, just so you get a better bite. The gauge of wire on this fuse holder is a little bit heavier, so I don't have to double that one up. Go ahead and crimp it. Now when I turn that master switch on the dash, we should have power on our heading sensor. Okay, so now with our trolling motor powered up, our heading sensor is powered up through the master switch on the dash. We need to pair the heading sensor with the controller on the Ultrex. So that's a pretty simple method. All you got to do is press this, and it's going to start blinking fast. And then on the top of the Ultrex, there's a pair button. Okay, I'm going to press and hold that, and you'll hear a tone change going from steady to a beep, and then you'll know the two units are paired, and the blinking on the heading sensor will go slow. So we're now paired. You heard a tone change and a slow blink. And it's Bluetooth paired. And the other thing is, you get questions a lot, how do I turn that off? Well, when you turn the trolling motor off, okay, now that Bluetooth communication is disabled, so that heading sensor will automatically turn off. So the final component of our hardware is the remote control. Okay, we got a charging cord, we got a DC power adapter, and then a lanyard to fasten to your remote to hang around your neck. A couple questions that come up is, how do I turn the remote on? Okay, simply press and hold the check button, and it'll say loading. Okay, and then you go through the screens, through the prompts, and now you have your functionality on your touchscreen waterproof remote. It is rechargeable with lithium-ion batteries, and there are replacements available if you ever need one. So the final step in our installation process is to calibrate our heading sensor. And in the heading sensor package was the owner's manual that shows you how to do that. So if you open it up, There's 2 pages with different directions. One's for iPilot, one's for iPilot Link. So you'll have to know what motor you have. This happens to be an iPilot Link motor. So you'll go out on the water and you'll go through your menu on your remote where it says calibration for iPilot Link. Then just follow the prompts on your boat. It consists of driving in a couple circles with the motor down, calibrating that heading sensor, making it more accurate. The nice thing about the calibration process is it'll give you step-by-step instructions on the remote on how to do it. So then when you're done fishing for the day and you're ready to power your remote off, you just press and hold the check mark button and you'll see the prompt show up on the screen shutting down. Now you can go ahead and put it away. So Minn Kota Ultrex comes in a number of different models, starting with either iPilot or iPilot Link. This particular one has iPilot Link, which is this cord here. If you just have an iPilot Ultrex, the only connection you're going to be making is the sonar unit to a compatible fish finder. Okay? In this particular unit, you're going to need the MKR M1 adapter that'll go from 14 pin to 8 pin. So these two will fasten together. This adapter cord will plug into the back of the sonar unit, and now you have full functionality of the sonar or the transducer that's built into the lower unit. Now this particular unit, as mentioned several times before, is iPilot Link MDI, which stands for Mega Down Imaging. Okay, so now we have the 2 cords. So this cord, the adapter cord, is going to stay the same, but when hooking up to this particular fish finder, you need an Ethernet adapter dongle is what it's called. Male to female end, you're going to fasten that to the iLink cord from the trolling motor, and that'll plug into the back of your fish finder. And now that gives you the full functionality of the iPilot Link, and the major component to that is follow the contour, where you highlight a specific depth contour, and the trolling motor will follow that depth contour all the way around the lake. Okay, also with that iPilot Link and the Bluetooth functionality comes into the one boat network where you can operate talons, you can operate the trolling motor from the fish finder, either on the bow, or if you have a full-blown Ethernet network in the boat, you can operate the trolling motor from the dash, you can deploy raptors or talons, stow them, a whole array of different options with this one boat network. So as mentioned earlier, this particular motor is an MDI or Mega Down Imaging. You can also get it in the Mega Side Imaging, MSI. Important to note that the MDI and the MSI are only compatible with the Humminbird sonar unit. That's also either MDI or MSI. Now, Minn Kota does make another version of the Ultrex, which has it's called US2 or Universal Sonar 2, that has temp built in. So Ultrex with the Universal Sonar transducer with the proper adapter allows you to utilize that sonar and temperature reading to a wide range of different sonar manufacturers. All right, guys, so that completes the installation of our Minn Kota Ultrex on the front of this boat, using my method step by step from beginning to end. And you know, as always, if you have any questions, be sure to refer to your owner's manual.